What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Do you feel that? It's starting to feel like Nintendo Direct or State of Play season, because it turns out we could have a couple of these presentations lined up over the next few weeks. We're going to go over where all of that is coming from here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Highguard, which did launch yesterday, and somehow the entire situation around that game has gotten even weirder. And with GTA 6 still apparently coming out at the end of this year, we've wondered if it could set a new standard and really push the $80, $90, $100 price tag for a game. Well, now there could be another precedent that it can set that would lean more into the digital side of things. We'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Super Monkey Ball. Well, a way for you to play Super Monkey Ball, maybe when you're at work and, working, but you have some time and you go, oh wait, I have access to a browser. If you have access to a browser, you also have access to Super Monkey Ball because it's been ported over so that you can just play it. And honestly, I went to the site to check it out, and it's quite impressive. Now, when I did fire it up, it has a couple of different options you can see, and from there, it'll just sort of drop you in to a board. But here's the thing, it's just an empty ball. I assume that has to do with Sega and their characters being incorporated here, and it's a roundabout way of being like, I mean, it's Super Monkey Ball, but without the monkey in the ball, and so it's cool. We can get by all the copyright legally, I guess. But either way, it plays very, very well. It just uses the arrow keys, and you, of course, shift the board around, and then you get the ball to the goal while collecting all kinds of bananas. But it's pretty awesome. If you get a chance, definitely check it out. Let me know what you think. Also, we did get some more information around Resident Evil Requiem, and we're almost a month away, just about, right, from this game. Well, we have some info around the PlayStation 5 Pro support, and I was actually quite impressed reading this. We can see this is over on PlayStation blog in Japan. When asking the director for the game about PS5 Pro enhancements, they say you can take advantage of the ray tracing on or off feature. When it's on, you can play at 4K output, 60 FPS, and full ray tracing. When it's off, those with a monitor that supports high frame rates can play at a maximum of 120 FPS with an average of 90 FPS. We spent a lot of time optimizing it, and that makes me think, okay, 120 FPS is the roof that they're targeting there, and it's going to fluctuate. So if they really got it working to where full ray tracing, 60 FPS, 4K, we'll say 4K-ish, as I'm sure the resolution will move around and use PSSR or new FSR even with AMD to upscale and make it look clean. That's probably the route I'll go, the 60 FPS with ray tracing. And I really don't have a problem with ray tracing if it doesn't tank performance, and that's basically what we know ray tracing to do. So when I hear, hey, it is heavily optimized and you get 4K 60 with ray tracing, yeah, that's probably the mode I'm gonna go with 99% of the time. Even thinking about, oh, maybe 100 some odd frames, the fact that it's 90 frames average makes me go, a nice capped even 60 would be nice with ray tracing enabled. So I'm really excited about this game, especially knowing that, hey, as someone who did buy a PS5 Pro, I will see at least some benefit from it. Oh, and for all of you Switch 2 owners who play Rocket League, good news, there is a patch that released that does add Switch 2 enhancements, and this is over on their website, and you can see the Switch 2 rendering enhancements, and from what I can tell, it mostly just maxes out what was already there. They do have some improved visuals, and they have improved shadows and other effects, but they didn't say take it up to 4K. In docked mode, it's now locked at 1080p, 60 FPS, so it's a very, very locked 60 frames per second from what I've seen. And then in handheld mode, dynamic resolution now targets 1080p at 60 FPS, but will still reduce resolution as needed to keep gameplay smooth. And you can see things like increased world detail, higher texture quality in handheld mode, improved lighting effects, and more. So it is good to see this. I'm a little unsure why they didn't go up to 4K. I'm not sure if the game moves very fast. I don't know if maybe some of the stuff they were seeing maybe behind the scenes as they were working on this patch and this enhancement, there was maybe breakup around the different cars as the camera's swiveling or something with the upscaling techniques. So hard to say, but good news again for Rocket League fans who have a Switch 2. Seems like the experience is much better because when you take the 720p image and you try to stretch it out to 1080p, especially in a game like that already looked pretty soft on the Switch 1, Not going to be the best, but now you don't have to worry about that. Check out the patch, should be much better. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo Directs. And I say Nintendo Directs because there are multiple. In fact, we just had one on Sunday, and sure, it was for the Super Mario Galaxy movie, but it's still a Nintendo Direct, and it sounds like we're going to have a couple more here, with one already being announced, and that's for Tomodachi Life. Now, this is something that Nintendo just put out on their Nintendo Today app, and then from there it was shared all over social media. So I guess for Nintendo, that's what they're trying to do, is get people to go to their application. But like we just kind of hang out and wait for it to show up anyway on places like Facebook, X, and what have you. But still, if you go to the Nintendo Today page, you can see Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, with this Direct, okay? That is happening on Thursday, the 29th, and it seems like they'll just be going over, of course, the game and giving us, I figure then, a release date for it, as from what I've seen, it's still autumn 2026, so we'd still be probably half a year out then, and I never really got super into Tomodachi Life, but people are really excited for this game, so that's good to say. I mean, I saw the trailer for it from the last Direct where it appeared in, almost 1 million views on that video of them showing it off. So again, people are into it here. And I guess it does work to give me characters something to do outside of just guest starring in all these other games and occasionally bowling for you and on Wii Sports. So again, that's good. Leans into the Animal Crossing kind of slice of lifestyle game. So that's good. But from there, so okay, again, we had a Nintendo Direct with Mario, the Mario Galaxy movie. That was on Sunday. This Thursday, we have Tomodachi Life. And it seems like maybe next week, there's another Direct. This was shared by Nate over on his podcast that aired yesterday. And it was just Nintendo Switch 2 2026 predictions. And he lists a whole bunch of stuff here. But I will say, Nate, he does his predictions. And most of the time you go through and you're like, hold on a minute, did you just tell us all the stuff that was going to be announced? I feel like he throws some stuff in there just to at least keep people guessing. But like, yeah, I think people were making lists of the stuff that he did call out in this video. I'd recommend just going and listening to it because he does add some context and nuance to each thing he's saying. You can kind of maybe read into it from there. But still, he did give us what he believes to be the Nintendo Direct date. I'm going to say believes to be because the thing is with Nintendo, of course, being global, there are different time zones and you can get it from different marketing departments that maybe it's a Thursday, but really like for us it'd be a Wednesday night or something like that. But he's looking towards Thursday, February 5th. So next week for a Nintendo Direct. So yes, that means that, I mean, in the span of like 10 or 11 days, we'd have 3 Directs. Yes, one for a movie, one for Tomodachi Life, and then one, I guess, just general Direct. And this is going to be interesting for Nintendo because now, especially with the Switch 2, going into these presentations, we think more and more about third party than ever before. Yes, we thought about third party with the Switch 1, but I feel like there were limitations, people thinking about how good would this game actually look on a Switch system that is 6 years into its generation and is definitely feeling like it's 6 years in, whereas the Switch 2 still feels like a device that can do all kinds of stuff, and we haven't tapped the potential of. So that's a fun thing to have because you don't know at all what's going to show up. I think some obvious stuff, of course, would be many of the publishers out of Japan seem very, very interested in the Switch 2. Go figure, it's doing well there in Japan. But even Western developers are certainly buying into the idea of this being just another big system for Nintendo that is much more capable than that Switch 1, especially with 4K being thrown around and 120 FPS. There's a lot that can be done with the system, so should be exciting going in for third parties. But then with first party, I'd like to see Nintendo start to set the tone for the generation with one game that's not coming up in the immediate few months or even in the immediate year. I don't mind if they call something out that's a couple of years in the future, like they've done with The Legend of Zelda multiple times, and just say, hey, look, we have something that you can look forward to that will be hitting the Switch 2, and then we're also gonna have all these other games that are coming up maybe in the next year. I think that'd be a good way to really get the ball rolling here for the generation with some big pillar release. But it's exciting stuff. We're going into a month with February with a couple of events, all right? I mean, we have the Nintendo Direct. It seems like right now, we'll just say, throwing out the February 5th to start things off. Remember, at the end of the month, there will be Pokemon Day, their presentation that should have Gen 10 Pokemon being unveiled for the Switch 2 and then rolling into the holiday season. And yeah, there'll be one other event that we'll touch on here later in the show. Next up, let's talk about Highguard. It did release yesterday. That was right around 1 o'clock Eastern time. And I'm watching this presentation that they're giving, and they're trying to explain it as best they can, but as they were going through it, and it's a PvP raid shooter, but it's 3v3. And as soon as I heard that, I said, okay, so it's 3v3v3, or there's gonna be multiple teams. No, there's just 2 teams. There's 6 people total in a room for this PvP raid shooter. And that seemed strange to me because they were showing off these maps, and they seemed very large. So I had concerns that it might be a lot of just running around or riding around on your mount with no real interaction with the other team. And that does seem to be the case for some reviews that are getting out there now. But as they were going through this presentation, I will give them credit, it did seem a bit more interesting than what we saw at the Game Awards. And Jeff Keighley, leading into this big reveal and release, starting to say, hey, you know what? I'll accept your apologies when all of this goes live and you actually can see the game. All right. With that said, they did launch, and over on Steam right now, you can see it's mostly negative on just over 10,000 reviews. Okay, so first off, when this page went live for the first time, people were leaving reviews 5 minutes in, and it was just like meme reviews. Like, you could read the stuff. I don't like Jeff Keighley, so this is a bad game, or something like that. And as time went on, people were leaving legitimate reviews after an hour or two saying things like, hey, it doesn't run great. It looks blurry. The connection issues are very obvious to where I can't find a match. The queue times are taking forever. The game's crashing. And then things like, hey, 3v3 isn't working. You just need more people, maybe 5v5. You need to figure out the aiming. That was a big one that I saw come up. And now they're saying, hey, it's just kind of boring. It's a mishmash of all kinds of different modes that seem like they don't necessarily fit together as well as they want it to. And then if you look over on SteamDB, it does appear that that's kind of reflected in the way that the player count has sloped down, showing that maybe people did buy into the hype. And it's a free-to-play game, so it's something you just check out for yourself. Like, if you just want to download it and play it, you can, and then go, okay, well, maybe this wasn't for me, because the game is a bit over 20 gigabytes, so it's not some massive Call of Duty size 100 plus gigabyte file or anything like that. So you download it, you try it out, and you go, okay, maybe not this game. And then you move on, and I mean, you can see it peaked at 97,000 players, but then started to dwindle down here to where it's right around 35,000 players now, meaning that, more than half of the players initially that started out decided to log out and didn't come back. Of course, I guess it is worth noting that it did launch on a Monday, so we'll see what happens this weekend coming up, and if this does have any kind of staying power, because it's a weird situation for this game. Again, massive spotlight because Jeff Keighley decided that there should be a massive spotlight on it, and then he stoked the flames a bit with some of his comments going into this big reveal and release, and now people are asking Jeff if he has any kind of financial gain or something out of this title, because it still doesn't make sense what he's seeing here. I will admit, I'm going to be playing it here in a bit after I'm done setting this video up and everything, so I'll get a chance to check it out ahead of the podcast this weekend, sure. But just seeing it and then seeing the reaction and people who were at least discussing it online and showing clips, I don't really know what Jeff is seeing here other than maybe just the pedigree of the developers behind the game. But eventually the game has to come out, and then you see what the reaction is and the reception. And it's not great right now, so I don't know, could this end up being a No Man's Sky situation where it's not great at first and then they spend 8 years and it ends up being awesome? It's possible, just doesn't seem very likely right now. Next up, let's talk about Sony and a state of play that seems to be lining up for, you guessed it, the month of February. In fact, right now, it seems to be the week after the Nintendo Direct. Now, this all started once again from Nate, who decided to just respond to somebody you can see. It was over on X, where they asked him about a state of play in February. He said, yeah, there will be one, yes. Okay, there we go. So we will apparently have some sort of state of play from Sony. But to add on top of that, Jeff Grubb did mention during his Game Mess mornings the week. Okay, so when asked about the idea of a state of play in February, he said, yes, it is. And yeah, I agree. It is happening. It's happening on February 12th. So there you go. Now, looking at February 12th, that's a Thursday. So, okay, I guess it could be that, but he did mention Monday. So, like, he seems to have crossed some wires there when it comes to the dates, thinking the 12th is a Monday. I think he's just saying the week of, we'll say, the February 12th, so the week after the Nintendo Direct, and I guess that's what we're looking towards now. I mean, again, just several weeks in a row of big-time events. Remember, we'll also see Nintendo and Sony report their financial earnings for the holiday, this previous quarter, which would be their holiday season, so that also makes sense why they may want to have events around that time to maybe give investors something else to look at when it comes to just more products they're going to sell into the marketplace. But with Sony in particular, of course, a lot of third-party stuff you figure will be there, and it could be all kinds of stuff. But the thing I'm really hoping we see from a first-party perspective is that 2.5D God of War, because I'm just so interested to see what it looks like, how it's going to play. I guess the story they're going to follow with it is a lot of question marks around that one, but that currently is probably the most interesting thing I have really to look towards there, because I'm already bought in on Saros. I guess you do need a release date for Wolverine, but I'm already bought into that, and Intergalactic is, who knows, a couple of years from now at this rate, so hopefully a 2.5D God of War is on tap, and they'll have that ready to show here in a couple of weeks. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about GTA 6 and how it could not only set a price precedent, but maybe a digital versus physical precedent, especially at launch for a game that is currently being looked at as the biggest release in gaming history. That's what we could see later on this year in November, but maybe not at on store shelves. Okay, so we can see this is over on Insider Gaming, and they say this comes from PPE's Grasdari. Their source, who handles physical video game sales in Europe, has informed Grasdari that this decision was made to avoid gameplay and story leaks, and GTA 6 will launch digitally on consoles at first. That's right, not physically. So this will be, we've seen this with other smaller titles where they have digital ready to go, but physical is just taking longer, and maybe they don't want to miss the holiday season. Or maybe they just want to get it out in time for a launch window, and the physical games will come later, and they'll ship those out through limited run games or whoever. And they say the sources have also revealed that they have received mixed reports about when the physical edition of GTA 6 will be released. Some have stated that it could arrive around 3 to 4 weeks after launch, whereas other sources have said players might have to wait until 2027 to see the physical edition. So again, the big concern here would be leaks around the game. And you think back to The Last of Us Part 2, which many people are pointing to right now as maybe something that had them think about this a bit more, because that was a pretty big leak that, I mean, it definitely damaged the discussion of the game at launch, but the game still sold well enough. It would have sold better if it didn't have that cloud hanging over it. Well, eventually people are going to play the game anyway on launch and then start telling people what happens. So it was going to get spoiled either way, but that was like a significant amount of time before they launched the thing. And with GTA 6, they don't want to mess around with this at all. We know Take-Two and Rockstar are already very secretive and will crack down on, we've seen them cracking down all kinds of leaks as it is, even from former employees and developers. So with this in mind, maybe they do think, hey, we'll give it a couple weeks for a buffer. And I still think they want physical games on store shelves though, for the holiday season. That would only make sense. You figure it's going to be massive at release for any digital copies. That'll sell no problem. But then you have the gift-giving stuff, and kind of think you want something you can wrap and put under the tree. So you would have physical copies of GTA 6 for the 10 or 11-year-old. I mean, look, I did enough retail back in the day and sold many, many copies of GTA 5 to a parent who was barely paying attention for their kid. So, but either way, this is something to keep an eye on, because I don't think it would be affected if they decide to forego a physical copy at launch. And in fact, it might tip the scales even more so in favor of digital, because it's going to be one of those can't miss releases for many, many people out there. Certainly don't want to get spoiled. I mean, if it's 4 weeks out for the physical that you're desperately waiting for, you might just say, you know what, I'll get it digitally and then I'll get it physically later on when it's like $20, a couple years from now or something. So definitely something to keep an eye on here, especially people who prefer their physical games. This is probably a story you don't want to be true. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is Game of the Year Madness. That's day 30. Clear Obscure Expedition 33 versus Donkey Kong Bonanza. And Expedition 33 took down Bonanza, which is setting up the showdown. It's going to be Hollow Knight Silksong versus Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Many people are already calling that. And look, we went through the gauntlet here, the whole bracket, and we've gotten to this conclusion at this point, so it seems like it's what the people wanted. Expedition 33 taking on Hollow Knight Silksong. I gotta be honest, looking at both of their paths to the finals here, I'm not really sure which one's going to win because they both have done very, very well. The other one that was very strong was Bonanza, and Expedition 33 cleared that pretty well. So this should be a lot of fun, and we'll see how that turns out starting today. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Team Slayer. It says, Age 1000 is the Dragon Ball Online timeline. Okay, so I've seen a lot of people mention that this could be a Dragon Ball MMO of some kind, and I've kind of looked at the Xenoverse games as them getting right up against the MMO looking glass, but not necessarily breaking through completely to where it's almost a World of Warcraft Dragon Ball game. Like a newer one, a new age one. And if that's what this ends up being, I'd be pretty excited, actually. I don't really look at MMOs as something I get super into because I know the amount of time those can eat up, but it's hard to pass up a brand new, I assume fully realized, Dragon Ball MMO. Again, 6 years of development. By the time it comes out, I figure 7. This seems like a massive deal. And I do wonder if they would approach it kind of like Genshin Impact even, where it's across mobile, PC, and on consoles. That could be a massive, massive user base for them if they pull it off. And maybe the history and development they've had with things like Xenoverse have set them up for this final big push. I'd be really excited for it. So here's hoping it's something like that. Otherwise, hey, you know what? Xenoverse 3, I'd still be pretty excited for that too. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to hear more details that have now been revealed around Fable, which for many people may have been the game of the show from that Xbox Developer Direct. I did an entire video deep diving into some of those details, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.